you should have heard, which I totally went over. But it applies to this, what we're saying this week too.
Morning. First reading from the book of Luke, chapter 15, verses 1 and 2. Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to him, and the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." The word of the Lord.
I think Paul has been meditating too. All right, that's what you should have heard last week, that this fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them. So here's the story that I was trying to tell the children, and this is only in the Gospel of Luke. There are 4 Gospels, but you will only find this in Luke's Gospel, and people just read this. Scholars argue with each other constantly about what does this mean? Okay, and you are all so lucky today, because I'm going to tell you. But I'm going to remember to read it first. Okay, here's from Luke chapter 16. Then Jesus said to the disciples, "There was a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was squandering his property. So he summoned him and said to him, 'What is this that I hear about you? Give me an account of your management, because you cannot be my manager any longer.' Then the manager said to himself, 'What will I do now that my master is taking the position away from me? I am not strong enough to dig, and I am ashamed to beg. I have decided what to do so that when I am dismissed as manager, people may welcome me into their homes.' So summoning his master's debtors one by one, he asked the first, 'How much do you owe my master?' He answered, 100 jugs of olive oil. He said to him, 'Take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 50. And then he asked another, 'And how much do you owe?' He replied, 100 containers of wheat. He said to him, 'Take your bill and make it 80. And his master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted so shrewdly. For the children of this age are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than are the children of the light. And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of dishonest wealth, so that when it is gone, they may welcome you into the eternal homes.'" This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise you, O Christ.
Isn't that like the weirdest parable you've ever heard? You know, make friends for yourselves with dishonest wealth. Like, people read this story and it's like they lose all of their guilt, because look, they say, look, Jesus is encouraging corruption. I don't have to change. All right, so I have a good joke. I hardly ever have jokes, because they're church jokes are usually, they're so lame. I mean, at least the ones that you can tell in church. But I have a good one for you. I love this one this morning. So, there's the superintendent of buildings and grounds at the White House. There really is. This is the position of the person who does kind of the plant management. So this superintendent, there was a problem because part of the fence that goes around the White House, it was damaged. And he called some contractors over so they could bid on the fence job. And there was a guy from Missouri, Florida, and then there was one from New York. Okay, so he has these 3 contractors, and he says, "I want one of you to fix my fence out here on the White House grounds." So he said, he asked the guy from Florida, how much is this going to cost me to fix it? And he took his tape, he did measurements, he took his notebook and did some figuring. He said, I can do it for $7,000. $3,000 for labor, $3,000 for my equipment and parts, and I'll keep $1,000 in profit. And he said, okay. And then he asked the contractor from Missouri. The contractor from Missouri also took his measurements, did his figuring on his notepad. He said, I can do it for $5,000. The superintendent said, great. The contractor said, I keep $1,000 profit also, but I only need $2,000 for labor and $2,000 for parts. So then he asked the guy from New York. The guy from New York says, I'll have this all done for you, $25,000. The superintendent looked stunned, because it was so much higher than the other ones, and the guy from New York didn't even go and take any measurements. In fact, the superintendent said, I don't think you even looked at the fence. How do you come up with this figure, $25,000 and so high? And the guy from New York says, it makes perfect sense. I'm going to give you $10,000. I'm going to keep $10,000. We're going to hire the guy from Missouri to fix the fence. And I heard that joke and I said, this is the guy that was in the parable. This is like the dishonest, the shrewd. He was shrewd, very shrewd. I think he got the job eventually. I think the superintendent went with the guy from New York. Because in the story in the gospel, this is so strange because the master goes up to his dishonest manager and he says, I understand through reports that you are swindling me. You are squandering all my money, and I don't know how much you're keeping and how much you're giving away, but I'm losing money with you. So you're fired. I'll give you a week to finish your business here, and then you need to leave. And then in Jesus' story, secretly, this guy calls all of his master's debtors because he says, I gotta have friends when I leave here. Well, I want people to feel indebted to me so that they might give me a job or a place to live or something. And he took all these debts of his master. One of them, he just cut it in half. He told the guy, quick, and he said, quick. He says, quick, just pay me half of that. Here's your receipt. And he did this to all the master's clients. Can you imagine how the fortune the master lost in these transactions? And then the master comes and compliments. Instead of calling the police, like Bernie Madoff, this guy has just lost all our money. He compliments him. And Jesus is using this story to, let me read you Jesus' words. I mean, even reading his words, Jesus always speaks so cryptically. I wish he would just speak plain English. He said, the children of this age are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than are the children of light. So after hearing this story, this is the meaning Jesus gives to it. So I'm telling you, I must have read between 10 and 20 different scholars, ministers. What do they do with this passage? Like, you're supposed to leave here today feeling some kind of edification and encouragement to go out and lead a better life, not to go out and be corrupt, not to become corrupted. This is what trying to convey. Last June, right here in our church, there were 20 of us, and a number of you sitting here today, that came to hear a church consultant talk about why our church is failing today, why are memberships declining, and you see church buildings for sale. He says, we came to hear a man talk about that. And it reminded me of this parable. Because there was a story this guy told us, a true one. And he was comparing a church today with Stop and Shop. And he said, if any of you go back this far, think back 50 years. Okay, and Kate, you can't do that. So think back 20 or 30 or 5 years even. Even 5 years. Do you remember what a shopping, a grocery store used to look like 50 years ago? It looked nothing like the Stop and Shop there now. I remember, see, I can think back 50 years. But I remember when you would go there, they just sold food. They just sold food. Maybe you could get some candy, something like that. But you couldn't go there and get school supplies. You can even get clothing in the Stop and Shop. It's probably not where we go to get our socks and things, but they sell that. Toothbrushes, trash cans, there's garden furniture. It was never like that. It was a small little place. And I guess before the big grocery stores, they were just mom and pop stores, right? Just little places, and you would go there and get essentials. Now look at it. Well, this is the point that Dr. Benroth was trying to make, is he says that to survive the companies, the grocery stores, you have to keep changing. You don't have people sitting there just punching numbers in a cash register. Look how long that takes. You just scan the food now, and it's all done technologically. You don't even need a cashier in so many of the lines. Could you have imagined that 20, 30, 50 years ago? That all of these people would be replaced? And then he said, Dr. Benroth said, okay, now think about your church. What did it look like 50 years ago? And I was thinking of this church. And you look at pictures, it looked pretty much like this. And okay, we've made some improvements. The sound system I'm guessing maybe 50 years ago there was even no sound system. And you just heard the minister talk loud with a lot of echo. When I came here, I remember there were these two, and they were small, tiny speakers that were hanging in the middle there, and there was a huge echo. So we came up, really, and now we can do our music through this Bose system. Wow. So we made a change there. But you know what? The pews are all still here. It looks the same. If we were Stop and Shop, these things would have been removed like 30 years ago. And we would have probably had something like movable chairs. And people would have been sitting maybe in a circle so you can interact. You can see who's in the church, and big changes have been made in church architecture and such. And what Dr. Benroth was getting us to think about is maybe people aren't coming now. There's a whole generation now that has never gone to church. Benroth said is, when one of these people that has never been in church walks into your church, it's like they're going into a museum. They don't see things like this now. Even like where Janet teaches, the school has changed. Do you remember the children all used to sit in rows, and you sat in desks and you all looked forward? Well, a lot of that, a classroom doesn't look like that now, often. It's changed. I think what Jesus is saying in this story is you gotta change with your age. He said the children of this age are more shrewd. They know how to change, how to get people to come. Stop and Shop knows how to. They say, oh, we need more lights. We need to have these products. These are what the people want now. They change. Jesus is saying, you got to think like that about your church. What is going to make people want to come and hear the gospel? Don't change the gospel. Don't change the message. But make it so that people will understand today. They come in here. It looks like the Smithsonian. What are people doing today? Even children. They're all like looking at their hand because their iPhone is in there. This is what is interesting to them. You've got programs. You've got apps. Kate, do you have an iPhone? Yeah. All right. There. Yeah, but there's so much. They communicate differently. There's even a different vocabulary when you're texting, isn't there? And so coming into a place like this, it's like it like gives people culture shock, and they say, God, I can't relate. So Dr. Benroth is saying, we got to be more shrewd and make this interesting. I thought of what we did on Rally Day, because that's still fresh in our memory. Do you remember, that was just 2 weeks ago, all we had going on here? We talk about shrewd. How do you get the kids to come? Have a bounce house. Maybe the parish house needs to be outfitted with trampolines. But I'm telling you, the kids came. They loved that. There were other activities. Nancy was doing face painting. Paul was giving people massages at church. Can you imagine coming to church and getting a massage and going home? Jesus said, peace, peace. Well, that'll give a person peace. You had a line, didn't you?
Yeah, that's my massage ministry.
It was a ministry. Paul had a line behind him. We had music up there. I mean, how many? Five from Mary playing the piano, and we had to talk about a sound system. It was a beautiful sound system, and there was music for every age. There was all kinds of the music, and I think that's why people didn't leave. They actually hung around. There were people here at 3 o'clock. And so it was all this shrewdness of our Rally Day planner. Oh, what else will bring people? We had free food. Just tell people you got free food. They'll come. I'm envisioning a Starbucks in the narthex. All of this sounds crazy and far-fetched, but 50 years ago, so did going to the grocery store and not having to go through a human being cashier and scanning all your stuff. It always sounds far-fetched. Jesus is saying, be shrewd. He's saying, And this is what I thought about. What if Donald Trump, I mean, there's a shrewd character, right? Maybe dishonest sometimes. Shrewd. What if he had a Damascus Road conversion experience, Donald Trump, and now all he wants to do is spread the gospel? That's the kind of mind we need working in the church. He'll get people coming in here. Donald Trump's university Bible study. We will have that place packed. That's the kind of thinking, though. So, did you see the movie Schindler's List? Did any of you watch that movie? That's your homework for this week. Even if you saw it, it came out a long time ago. Try to see Schindler's List if you want to see this parable in action. Because I'm going to talk more about that next week. Schindler, okay, he was a German man. It's a story about how one man lived the gospel. He saved thousands of lives through bribery, through love and self-sacrifice, and compassionate swindling. So we're going to talk about that. Jesus wants us to be creative, to get the love out creatively. Let us pray. Dear God, help us to have this kind of shrewdness that Jesus talked about, to be creative in cultivating our good and the love in us, and spreading it, sharing it with everyone. We offer our prayers in your name, Jesus, for you taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. You know, I just thought about this as we're... Cindy it got the little camera here, and so some of the sermons and the readings are going on YouTube. That's that kind of... Cindy, you're so shrewd. That's the kind of thinking that Jesus is talking about. Use some of the gadgets and the means that are communicating today and spread the gospel with it. And I think that's exactly what we're doing there. All right, now we're going to sing our last hymn, Just As I Am. And it's 207 in the Black Hymn Book. Okay. Just as I am. Just as I am without one plea, but that your blood was shed for me, and that you called inviting me, O friend of God, I come. Just Jesus.